4 o'clock hour. Max Olson, theathletic.com, joins us on Sikkim 365 Radio. Max, I was going through the updated transfer portal, and I kind of forget that they have to still abide by the same dead period or whatever, I guess, as those who are being recruited elsewhere, high school players. But I saw this number 10 and 11, Grayson and Gabriel Murphy, the twins at North Texas. How good are they?
Yeah, two of the better young pass rushers in Conference USA. And North Texas has lost a couple of their better players to the portal, as a lot of G5 schools had this offseason. But yeah, the Murphy twins, very talented guys, and they are going through this recruitment together. Whenever they get an offer, they announce it together. Hey, we've been offered by this school, and they're certainly going to be going to the next school together. Which I'm sure for some schools that are tight on spots makes it a little bit tricky, but very productive years as pass rushers this year. And, they've been offered by USC and some big Power 5 programs and stuff, so interested to see where they end up.
Max, what did you make of how the Art Briles situation unfolded last week and into this week?
I mean, you guys asked me about it last week, and I think the thing I said was that from everyone I kind of talked to, over the years, the term they always use was radioactive, and I think you kind of saw what that looks like here, where, I wouldn't say that, Jackson State went about this a very good way. I think if you're going to, Grambling State, don't think they went through it in a very good way. Like, if you're going to try to make this hire, clearly you need all the stakeholders on board with it. And I think that the pushback from Doug Williams was important in this. I think that clearly from a PR standpoint, you have to do a lot better job than they did. And, I think that if you go about that hire, in a shady way, then I think people are going to respond to that. It's not going to go well for you. So, do I think he'll get another chance? I really don't know. I think that this falling apart within a couple of days is probably going to scare off a lot of schools from trying to make that move.
Yeah, and you keep thinking, okay, this is the last chance, and then somebody else. And I wish that if it would have worked out, I think it could have worked out had Grambling's AD positioned this better and maybe met with those, even whether it's Doug Williams and they may have had a couple of conversations or whatever. There has to be a way to sit in the room rather than text messages and phone calls, right? Or even, hey, we're going to do this. We really think this is what we need to do, and here is why. And if they say no, then you just go about your business and you go after somebody else.
Yeah, and of course, we don't really know how many times this has really happened where he's gone after one, or maybe there's been interest on one side and it's just been shut down. But I'm sure that at this point, Art Briles has had that door slammed on him a lot. And so I really don't know if you can't get it done at the FCS level, and we saw Southern Miss tried to do it a few years ago too. I really don't know. I think that probably as much as Hugh Jackson is a friend of his, and I'm sure really wanted to pull this off. I think you're just seeing that. I think the backlash is just really significant, and I think these leaders that are trying to make him try to pursue a hire there. Certainly are not making the case to the public at all that Art Briles deserves to be on a college campus.
Max, I did a top 5 list the other day, and I said that one of the teams I thought was going to take a significant jump this year was Nebraska. Now, Smokey, as scarred as he is, completely poo-pooed it and said he's not going to believe it until he sees it. But my theory behind it is this, and I'd like to test it against you. Scott Frost is in a corner. He's had the Adrian Martinez codependent dysfunctional relationship is over now. They're going to have a true competition at quarterback, and more than likely Casey Thompson wins that. Mark Whipple is there. They've got a special teams coach. They lost a bunch of close games last year that were due in large part to mistakes on special teams or Adrian Martinez. All those seem to be maybe improving. I'm not saying they're going to win the Big Ten, but I don't know. It sounds like a team that could take a big step forward to me.
Yeah, I think that the thing that's tricky with them is there's just, like, you mentioned a bunch of them, but like they've added a lot of pieces. They've added a lot of transfers, and they have a lot of their freshmen, enrolled early, and they've added 5 coaches and addressed some of the issues. And the question is, and Scott Frost, I was there on Monday when they had their presser, and Scott Frost, admitted it from the start. It's like, we've got all these pieces, but that doesn't make a team. Like, we've got to figure out how to put this all together and actually, form a successful thing here. And so I'd say there's a long way to go. And that is not a team that returns like a bunch of like fifth-year senior captain type guys. It's a real, a lot of those guys went pro, either early or they graduated or whatever. So there's just a lot of moving parts of that Nebraska team. Now you could just look at last year's record and say they shouldn't have been as bad as they were. That a lot of those coin tosses that didn't go their way, those really close games. If you flip a bunch of those, then they're at least a bowl team and maybe a 7-8 win team. But man, they just have they have a ton of work to do, and I would probably err on the side of caution with Smoak.
Yeah, I just I'm numb to it now, honestly, and I know they have Whipple, and I saw the story you wrote about getting the ball in the best player's hands. I mean, I don't know why you have to have him tell you that. I mean, that I thought that was football 101.
Well, but see, the point of that is that the past few years that he's been an OC, his thing is like, I'm going to have that receiver that catches 100 passes. I have no idea who that person is in Nebraska. Like, they just don't have experience at that spot. They don't have a stud at running back. They were pretty bad on the O-line, and they've got a quarterback situation that's up in the air there. So they like Casey Thompson, but there's just a lot of question marks there, and I kind of lean in terms of I'll believe it when I see it a little bit.
Okay, Max Olson, theathletic.com, with us on Sikkim 365 Radio and 365 Sports. So who benefits the most with the transfer portal? Division I or FCS teams who get the elite or the better players from the level below? Or do they, the ones from FBS, get anybody that's below them that's pretty good? Because I wouldn't think those are as impacted players that maybe are going to the other schools at the highest level.
Yeah, the food chain of that's pretty interesting because there's definitely Group of 5 programs that would probably say, man, the portal was brutal. We lost some very good, all conference type players over this offseason. But this is how it is now. You just have to replace those guys with other players in the portal, and certainly a Group of 5 program can benefit and take Power 5 or even ex-SEC players and kind of have some of those projects of guys that hadn't worked out for them so far, or they haven't got the playing time they need or whatever. And you can benefit that way if you embrace it. But, certainly the ones that benefit the most, you've got some of those, you've got some of the national title contender teams that add 2, 3, 4 really, really talented guys like Alabama has and Ohio State has. But, certainly it's the programs that are chasing, 8, 9, 10 transfers in one off season. Those are the interesting ones because you kind of feel like those could go either way, but certainly those schools like Florida State or Ole Miss that have gone heavy on them, it's going to be fascinating to watch how quickly it pays off.
Yeah, desperation can be a stinky cologne.
I think we lost you.
What happened here?
Yeah.
Oh, there we go.
There we go.
Desperation can be a stinky cologne there, Max, when it comes to the transfer portal, or like you said, it can work out. One of the guys in
there's also schools that are not usually in that. Like, so USC and LSU have taken a ton of transfers this offseason, and that's because they've got new coaching staffs that are trying to plug needs and stuff. And we're going to see, are those players actually good enough to play at those schools, or are they just kind of taking players just to take players? There's some schools that have been more invested in it this offseason that you wouldn't expect, and I'm curious to see how that pays off.
Do you have any clarity on Jaden Daniels and where he might start looking?
No, not so far. It's been pretty quiet with him and with JT Daniels. I think that there was a rumor, I want to say a week ago, that Jaden Daniels was looking at Missouri, and he shot that down, said, I'm not committed anywhere. I'm still open to my recruitment. I know that there were reports at the time when he went in the portal that he was talking to a bunch of Pac-12 schools. I'm not sure how many of those actually have a need at QB, but, sometimes when a guy like that becomes available, then you're willing to give up what you got. So, that one is still that one's still uncommitted and going to be pretty interesting.
Do you feel like now the transfer portal for quarterbacks, and I know Caleb Williams, Dart, Cameron Ward, who you love a lot and have talked about him quite a bit, is almost like college prospects at quarterback where people need them so badly that some are going to be reaches?
Yeah, I think so. And last offseason wasn't as crazy. I mean, there was, certainly Bailey Zappi had an amazing year and Hooker worked out. Jack Cohen was fine. There were some solid pickups last year, but really not to the level that we've seen this offseason where you've got, truly you've got 5-star guys and top 100 guys that are going in the portal and making changes. And there's just a real game of musical chairs going on this offseason. And will all of those work out? I mean, No, probably not, whether it's injuries or guys that are maybe going to the wrong offenses or going to the wrong coaches, or even guys that are going into situations where maybe they still have to compete for a job and maybe they don't win that job. But, this offseason was definitely way more significant in terms of turnover at the QB position. And, for a school like Baylor, I think you feel pretty good about what you got, obviously. But it's always interesting to monitor that. And maybe there are guys that go in that you just wouldn't expect.
Yeah, I'm constantly fascinated by the fact that Baylor, and again, it could still happen, but these last couple of years, they have not lost guys in the portal. I mean, Dave Aranda's kept them there, and they're no different than anybody else that has guys that aren't playing or think they could maybe, play more somewhere else.
Yeah, and in the case of Jacob Zeno, obviously, like that's a player that wants to play, and it makes sense for him to move on and stuff. But no, you're right. I mean, Baylor's been pretty immune to all of that. I mean, it made sense when Charlie Brewer moved on the way he did, but obviously he put in 4 years at Baylor, so that's kind of a different deal. But yeah, no, I think that certainly when you look at depth in the QB room, it's really hard to have that right now. And Baylor's one of those schools where you'd say, man, we really like 3 or 4 guys we got in this room here.
Yeah, I wonder if it's also a relationship. It's about playing time. It's just like free agents, they all say it's not about the money, and most of the time, 9 out of the 10 times it is. Is playing time the main reason? Is that the main reason people enter the transfer portal?
I mean, if we're talking the QB position, yeah, it's playing time, or it's, a lot of times what we see is just kind of, you have that one setback in your career, and you look at, Dylan Gabriel, for example, this year, you wouldn't have expected Dylan Gabriel would be leaving UCF, but, one thing goes wrong, he gets injured, misses most of the season, a freshman steps up, and he feels like between that and having gone through a coaching change there, you feel like, okay, it's time for me to find something else. And so we see a lot of that, and there's certainly the ones like Caleb Williams are super rare and unique, and same with Quinn Ewers, but, in a lot of cases, it's players who, whether they've started or not. I mean, it's certainly for a lot of these players, if you're not getting that playing time in the first 2 years at quarterback, you're going to leave. But, we've also seen some veteran proven guys that things just didn't, like Spencer Rattler, things just didn't kind of bounce the way they thought they would this year. And so you make a change.
Thank you, Max. Appreciate your time. Max Olson, Thursdays, 4 o'clock, theathletic.com with us. And as we mentioned yesterday, and there was a thread on Sick'em 365 Premium about the subscription, it's well worth it because of the writers. I did see this, and I was going to ask him one more question. Jason Kersey, who has done a really, really, really good job of covering Oklahoma for the Athletic, I saw where today he put up one of those career move threads that he's getting out of writing, getting out of the business. Said he needs to just get away. And he actually mentioned he was, I believe, going to go and try to become an attorney. And so that was, and I saw where Max responded to him. I know that those two are pretty close, but that's one of those stories that from theathletic.com did a great job. A lot of great writers. We've had a lot of them. And it's one of the few, again, that to me is, other than Sick'em365.com, which I am a member because I work under the umbrella, the Athletic is one that I do pay a subscription for. When we come back, Mickey Spagnuolo eventually